Yo, what up, street dogs? Eric Kim. All right, so the turbo vote. This one is on elitism. So some thoughts. So first and foremost, what does elite mean? So elite actually means to elect, right? Elite, elect, the words actually sound kind of similar. So I think generally speaking, at least back in the times of Rome, to me a matter of the elite was to be elected by your common peoples. Now, the reason why this is not kind of good is that like you'd have to go out and canvass for votes, you'd have to deceive people or whatever in order to get the votes, and give people false promises, blah blah, or sometimes gray lies or whatever in order to get elected, and therefore that's what made whatever happen. Now, the reason I find this very interesting is, oh wow, what a beautiful day today. So why I find this interesting is kind of growing up, I kind of grew up pretty poor. I mean, like not like starving poor, but like certainly kind of the type of poor where you're not sure where the next meal's gonna come ish, where it's like my dad would gamble away the rent money. Long story short, my mom fought for bankruptcy. So as a kid, I kind of knew that with life, everything was uncertain, unpromised, and that was just kind of the fact of life. But rather than causing some sort of like resignation from reality, it actually emboldened me. It actually made me more courageous towards the face of adversity and reality. And so actually, for myself, it actually ended up being a good thing. But anyways, so talking about elitism. So typically with elitism, this is I think the reality. So I think we all want to be elite in the general sense of like being on top of the hierarchy, aristocracy, royalty, whatever, or just whatever. But it seems like it's generally our Judeo-Christian morality which prevents us from doing so, because for the most part, in today's world, to be elite is considered like morally evil, in the sense that utilitarian society tells us that we're all equal, we shouldn't stand out too much, don't make others feel bad, everyone gets a trophy, blah blah. Now, I think for most of my life growing up, I was very anti-elitism because I kind of grew up poor, so it's like I'm not part of the elite class, so it's like whatever. But the irony is actually my grandparents and actually my family were from the kind of like elite aristocratic class growing up, or not growing up, but from whatever. Like my for example, my grandfather on my dad's side, he man, this is crazy, this is like right after the Korean War, dude. The guy had a Rolex, Contex 3A camera. And then my grandma told me that camera cost as much as a car at the time. So obviously very rich. And then on my mom's side, my grandfather was a doctor. Our whole family on that side of Korea, it's in, they're all like professors. One of them actually ended up being one of the consultants for the Blue House, which is the Korean White House. I actually toured around the Korean White House, Blue House thing as a kid. And so certainly like my family comes from elite class, but in some funny ways coming to America was almost kind of like a downgrade, because we had to kind of start over again from scratch. But anyways, but I don't feel bad or bitter or sad about it. Actually, I feel happy, because if I stayed in Korea, I'd probably be some sort of like corporate executive at like Samsung or something boring like that, whereas at least here in America I was able to become self-employed and entrepreneurial, whatever. So one of the things that I believed in a long time is like notion of open source, that no matter how rich or poor you are, you have access to information and knowledges to thrive as an artist. And that's why generally for the most stuff I put up there is open and free. But the reason I think about elitism, so currently, just thinking about, just the world and stuff like that. So Okay, so in terms of universities, probably in the world, certainly in terms of ranking or hierarchy, Harvard is number one, right? And actually the irony is Harvard was just named after some sort of like pastor or priest or something like that. So now we have this symbolic notion of Harvard as the apex of society. But the funny thing is, I've been there, I met a lot of people there, and for the most part, it seems like everyone at Harvard is just a bunch of like insecure nerds. Like even the students are all insecure because, obviously they're all smart, but then none of them have self-confidence. Like professors and stuff like that, everyone's just trying to be petty and care too much about their reputation, so they feel very insecure about themselves. So no one in the institution actually feels secure because, why? In some ways, they're embarrassed to be part of Harvard, and also they feel dependent on Harvard because that's where they get their credentials. They can't just have their own credence or credentials for themselves. But anyways, but then, okay, to take a step back, certainly at the end of the day, everyone would prefer to be at Harvard than, let's say, even my alma mater, which is UCLA. So if I had a choice, free scholarship between UCLA and Harvard, I really loved LA and I thought it was great, but obviously I would choose Harvard. It's like, dude, it's fucking Harvard. But anyways, so even when it comes to photography, cameras and stuff like that, right? Every photographer, at least once in his or her life, maybe aspires to buy a Leica. Not everyone, but, or like, okay, if you had a choice between an iPhone or a Samsung phone, assuming you got the best model for free, of course you would choose the iPhone or the Apple product. So there is certainly kind of an elitism or hierarchy in terms of life, in terms of goods. Now, this is the tricky thing. What is maximally beneficial to us? So elitism is interesting because just in a general sense, I tend to think of elitism as like there are some people who tend to be higher on the totem pole than others, which I think is a fair claim. So if you're the dude living in your mom's basement playing World of Warcraft all day versus Elon Musk, of course Elon Musk is higher up in the hierarchy, is like valued more, but then kind of the weird like utilitarian mentality that we got in Christian morality is like all souls are created equal before God and stuff like that. But I think we're all like created equal, but certainly through our actions and activities we kind of prove ourselves and differentiate ourselves. And so my thought is we shouldn't strive towards a society where everyone's quote quote equal, but rather maybe just like we should have the mentality that everyone is born equal and should be given equal access to education, information, and opportunities. But ultimately in this game of life, you choose and you dictate what you want out of life and stuff like that. And this is where the hard thing is. No one is actually allowed to think and meditate on like what they really want in life for themselves and to become truly independent thinkers, free spirits, stuff like that. So, because the irony is like, I think you could actually be poorer but more elite than other people. So like, if I had a choice of being, a poor entrepreneur making like $20,000 a year, but I had 100% freedom over my life, versus if I was like IBM CEO making $1 million a year, but having to just sit in 200 hours a week of meetings, certainly I would choose the more poor life, because like I would think that individual, assuming they're making art, they're philosophizing and doing other things, to me that's far more worthy than being just like an actor, which is most CEOs. So the general gist is, if you're kind of anti-elite, you might have grew up poor, and why is it so evil? So let's think that maybe equality isn't the goal of life.